So let's talk about manifestation. Manifestation is not a word I often use. I tend to think of things in terms of experience creation or just creation. But a lot of people use the term manifestation, and a lot of people like to think about things in terms of manifestation, and it's a great way to think about things. And what I've noticed is manifestation has gotten more and more popular. There are more and more people who are more and more interested in manifestation than there's probably ever been. And there's also a wealth of information on manifestation that exists now. Whether you look into Abraham Hicks or you look into Seth, or there's so many different people that you could learn manifestation tips, tools, tricks, formulas, whatever. There's people who swear by affirmations. There's people who say affirmations do not work at all. Everybody has their own individual take on it, and they will sell you their take on it, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with selling their take on it if their take is useful to you. But what I want to talk about today is finding your own way and starting to understand your own way. If you're watching this video, I would assume you're interested in manifestation on some level, and I would assume it isn't quote unquote working for you as much as you'd like it to. So you are looking into all these different ways that you can make manifestation or creation more effective for you. And I'm sure this is not the first time you've heard the word manifestation, so you've probably had a number of different sources tell you how to do it. And whether that's through affirmations, whether that's through visualization, whether that's writing things down a bunch of times in a row, whatever it is, a vision board, however someone has told you you should manifest. There's a lot of schools of thought that are big into, well, you got to feel like it's real, or you've got to think that it's real, or you've got to believe that it's real. Some kind of prerequisite that needs to go on in your mind, in your body, in your emotions before something will come into reality. And again, that's a workable way to think about it. That's a fine way to think about it. There isn't anything wrong with any of that methodology or modality. But I think a lot of people get frustrated with it because there are times when you think, oh, well, I'm thinking about it a lot and it's not showing up, or I've been told that I need to feel a certain way, but I can't seem to motivate myself to feel that way and it's just not showing up, or I must have subconscious blocks, whatever it is, right? For as many people who will explain to you how to manifest and how to do it effectively, there are just as many people, if not more, who will explain to you why you can't manifest effectively because you got something going on internally that you need to deal with using their system that you need to pay money for, right? So that's all fine. I don't mean to condemn anybody who operates that way, and if anybody like that in your life has benefited you, I'm not telling you to disregard their way. Take whatever works from anybody else's way, but be curious what your own way is, right? If you're asking yourself something like, how does manifestation work? How can I manifest this? How can I get this? Look at that question for a second. That question, how do I get this to show up, shows you that you don't think that it already exists. And it shows you, the how of it shows you that you think you need someone or something else to give you an intellectual understanding of what's going to make it happen. But the whole reason you're probably interested in manifestation in the first place is you don't really want to do all the freaking work of linearly making things happen as you've been told you would have to do, particularly like everybody loves the idea of manifesting a bunch of money, right? And One of the ways you could manifest a bunch of money is to get a job you don't want to do and work it a lot. But like, if you wanted to get a job you don't want to do and work it a lot, you wouldn't be looking at how to manifest money. You would be working a job you don't want to work a lot. Probably wouldn't even have any time to look at manifesting because you'd be too busy grinding yourself down to the bone, doing something you don't want to do. So you've got to come clean with yourself that part of what interests you about manifestation is it's an easier way, a more efficient way, a more fun way of getting what you want than the conventional wisdom might tell you how to get what you want, you know? You go and ask your parents, how can I make a bunch of money? They're probably going to tell you to work hard or something like that. They're probably not going to tell you, well, lay on the couch and take a nap, and while you're taking a nap, think a little bit about how much money you'd like to have and see if it's there when you wake up, right? They're probably not encouraging you to tap into that faculty. They probably don't even think that faculty is real. As popular as manifestation has become, we're still not living in a world where every person thinks that you can just easily snap your fingers and whatever you want will be right there in your hands. And if you believe that, most people will think that you're crazy, which you don't want, right? You don't want anybody to think you're crazy. So you won't explore all these different things that are available to you in realms that the average person cannot see or engage with, or doesn't want to see or engage with, or doesn't believe they can see or engage with. You will not let all that be part of your experience because you don't want people to think you're a nutcase or a kook. But putting all that aside, what is your way of manifestation or creation? When I ask you that question, doesn't that seem a lot easier than how do I get the money to show up? What have I got to do to have the money by tomorrow? What is my way? Is there something that I know about this? Something that I'm capable of, that I have not been taught, that has not been explained to me, that has not been validated for me and verified for me, that has not been encouraged for me, because other people maybe don't have any clue that it's even possible? Do you consider yourself a miracle worker? Do you consider yourself someone who can create miracles? And do you consider that to be easy? A lot of the different strategies that people have for manifesting and the different ways that they tell you to go about it, it's really almost as much effort as just going and getting it in physical reality without doing any of the mumbo jumbo. You know, if you're going to sit for 365 days and write down 100 times, I am rich, I am rich, I am rich, that is, I guess, less work than, you know, working 40 hours a week or whatever, but it's still a lot of work if you think about it. And you got to ask yourself, is it necessary? If it feels good for you, if it feels right for you, if it's expansive and fun to engage in that sort of thing, then you're on the right track. But if it feels like homework, the whole reason you're interested in manifestation and creation is because you don't want to do your homework, right? Can you admit that to yourself at least? And if you'll admit that to yourself, okay, the whole reason I'm interested in all this magic stuff is because I don't really like working. I'm willing to admit that. You then will confront whether or not you think you deserve to have it so easy. Because most people on the planet are not going to choose for it to be so easy. But because they don't choose for it to be so easy, we look at them and think it's just not possible. And so we feel bad if something is easier for us. And there's all kinds of people who talk about these different elements of society, people having privilege and things like this. And I don't want to get into all of that, but it's like you see there's an idea in the collective unconscious that nobody should have more than anybody else through easy means. People should have to work hard to have the same amount as everybody else. And if you have more, you should have worked that much harder to get it. You should not be allowed to come by that easily. So, if people are going to be upset that someone is the kid of a movie star, so they have things seemingly easier, or they were in the right place at the right time, so they had to, or they got lucky, or they won the lottery, or whatever, how much more annoyed would they be with you if you just close your eyes and go, I'd like about $10,000 extra today, and then it just showed up from nowhere, and you had no explanation, and you didn't know why, and that could happen for you every day. Do you think there might be a little bit of a resentment that you're resisting in the global unconscious, the collective unconscious, for that level of, not having to do anything difficult, or not having to do anything that debases you, or not having to really do anything at all? Like, our current psychology on a collective level is not really oriented towards that level of freedom and that level of choice and that level of just relaxation. So when you start to strip that away and you go, okay, part of the reason that I'm going and trying to learn manifestation like it's some kind of system is I probably believe it should be work. I probably can't just open myself up to the idea that it's meant to be easy. It's meant to be incredibly easy. The whole reason I'm doing it is because I want an easier life that requires less struggle. And how many people around you are championing that versus how many people around you are buying and selling the myth that, like, hard work is what makes the world go round, or struggling or suffering is, or not even that it makes the world go round, but that it's just part of reality and you cannot escape it and you can't get away from it, and it's going to color your experience whether you like it or not, right? So when you strip away this aversion to having it easy, this attachment to pain and suffering and struggle and, this is my blood, sweat, and tears to get this. When you start to strip that away and you say, regardless of what anybody else believes or will have as their individual experience, I'm going to see what I can create. I'm going to see what's possible for me, even if I think I'm nuts for thinking that this is possible. And you start to strip away the sense that you don't deserve it, or that deserving is even real, right? Do you want to live in a world where you have to deserve everything you want? Or do you want to live in a world where everybody can have whatever they want and there's no holdback, there's no greed, there's no, making sure you live up to the test? Do you want to live in a world that is kind to everyone and is generous to everyone, and there's not a necessity for working so hard pointlessly for years? What is it you'd really like to experience? You see that as soon as you ask that question, what is it I'd really like to experience? The manifestation starts to work on itself. You don't have to sit and go, well, okay, I'm going to write out step 1, I'm going to write out step 2, and I'm just going to list off the steps until I get to step 100, and then I'm going to do them all. When you ask the question, what is it I would really like to experience? You can feel it start to form. You can feel your life start to reshape. And when you sit and think, God, life is terrible. God, everything is miserable. How could it get any worse? Like, oh, what's next? When you have thoughts like that, it feels like things are reshaping to form even more tragedy or misery or whatever. But the thing is, the really important thing about that, and why I keep going to what is your way, is a lot of this emphasis on whatever pattern your thoughts are taking, or whatever pattern your emotions are taking, or, ask the universe and this sort of thing. It's like that creates a feeling that you need to adjust your behavior and get your behavior right. And if you get your behavior right, the universe or God or whoever or whatever will give you what you're asking for if you're good enough, right? A lot of this prescriptive manifestation advice is really just different kind of parenting, different kind of religion, different kind of socialization, right? It's just telling you a different version of, if you act the way you're supposed to act, we will love you. And if you don't act the way you're supposed to act, you will suffer, right? I think a lot of people who are big into manifestation, if they have a day where they feel bad, or a week where they feel bad, or a month where they feel bad, or God forbid a year, or a lifetime, they think that there's no capacity for them to create or experience anything other than that, because they think they're digging themselves a hole based on their own bad behavior. But that's not really how it works. Otherwise, if you ever had a bad day, you'd never get out of it, right? And you'd have a good day, and you'd never get out of that either. The thing about it is, you are one with whatever creative force inspires everything. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you reach your hand out and you just think about the atoms of $1 billion rearranging themselves and then there's $1 billion. It doesn't necessarily mean that. But you are much more closely connected to the energy underneath everything that's shaping everything, that creates everything, than you're ever going to know about. Intellectually, you can't even comprehend it. That's why asking for your way, you go beyond the intellect of it, the information of it, the going and reading a book about how to do it correctly. Those things are great. I read books constantly about all different kinds of metaphysical, spiritual, psychological subjects, and I find it all incredibly fascinating. But probably the most beneficial thing for me when reading stuff like that is when I go, oh, I don't necessarily think that part is true for me. I see what's true for me, and I see what's not true for me. And I start to learn where we will limit what's available and what's possible based on the information that already exists. You think about something like a language learning model, and it can only create out of the language that already exists within the model. You ask ChatGPT or something like that a question, and it's only going to give you language that already exists. It is not going to create totally new ideas free of existing context. It's really just contextually interpreting what you're asking it, and it's giving you an answer that contextually makes sense, even if what's underneath it is meaningless. So we have to treat ourselves as more advanced than that, because we are, right? We can synthesize all the existing information that we've ever received in our lives. We synthesize that all the time into who and what we think we are. And when people talk to us and ask us what we think and how we feel, that is often a synthesis of all of our past life experiences. But it can also go beyond that. We can come up with totally brand new ways of thinking, totally brand new ways of engaging with the world, totally brand new concepts, and totally brand new experiences. Like, most people have a similar experience their entire life. I don't mean like in terms of the events in their life. I mean, their experience of what's going on feels the same. So, walking around feels the same. Maybe there's pain sometimes, maybe there's not pain sometimes, this sort of thing. But their conception of walking around is largely the same across their entire life. Their conception of thinking and what thinking is and what thinking does is largely the same across their entire life. Their conception of other people and what other people are and how other people work and what other people mean is largely the same, right? They go into their patterned responses and they live there. But you could have a day where suddenly your perspective on other people shifts entirely. You think about them as bodies in space, and you think about each individual cell of their body animating just as it needs to for them to move. And you don't think about them as a person. You don't think about their personality. You don't think about, their inner psychology. You just think about, wow, that's a really complicated physical system moving through space. That would be very different than what most of us do, which is like kind of assume that ourselves and everybody else is just like a brain on legs. Other than in these scenarios like singing or dancing or sports or like things that are very physical, in the world now, most of us are like intellectual processes that occasionally dip out into physical reality. Like, we're so hooked into social media and the internet and things like this that the body has really taken a profound back seat. And even the way we deal with the body is influenced by these intellectual processes that it did not necessarily used to be so influenced by. What does all this have to do with manifestation? I'm just trying to show you the potential for thinking about things in an entirely different way. Hundreds of years ago, they thought the sun orbited the earth, or the sun was just up in the sky and the earth was down below, and the sun was a heavenly body and the earth was basically hell. And people started to theorize that the earth orbits the sun, and they were persecuted for believing that. They were killed in a lot of cases for believing that and for expanding upon that theory and for studying it. Now, what's interesting is you and I can say we know that the sun stays fixed or whatever and the earth spins around it. We can say we know that, but we only know that because we've been told. And that information is not super relevant day to day. The sun comes up, the sun goes down. You don't really have to think about it. But think about all the information you've been given about manifestation, about creation, about how powerful you are, how powerful you're not. And think about those steps, those blueprints for manifestation that you've been given. Affirm this every day. Affirm it 3 times, affirm it 6 times, affirm it 9 times. Only think about what you want to manifest when you feel good, and make sure you're in a really heightened feeling good place and pull it towards you. Whatever it is, right? Look at each of those things and ask yourself, does this tool or mechanism, trick, Does this come from a perspective of me being as powerful as I am? Or does this come from a perspective of I don't have that much power and I need to use this special trick because I can't just direct my own destiny as effectively as I want to? Because if you're practicing things where the underlying idea is that you're not incredibly powerful beyond anything your mind can comprehend, it's not as strong as your way. So you want to start to really question every day, what is my way? Whatever you want. Write down all the things you want. And for each of them, just look at them. What is my way? You don't even have to write them down if you don't want to. If that's not part of your way, don't write them down. What is my way for every single thing that you'd like to experience? What's the way I create this experience? Is the experience already created? Does the experience already exist? If everything is infinite, it has no beginning or end, time and space and all these different ways that I experience a singular reality, if those are parameters by which I experience this singular reality, but beyond that is an infinite expanse of every different reality that could ever possibly exist, does what I'm interested in experiencing already exist? Do I already exist knowing how to get there, feeling how to get there, already being there? So do I need to dig in and psychoanalyze myself for 1,000 years? Do I need to uncover all of my blocks? Or can I just be there? I don't even have to go there. I'm already there. Which sounds crazy, right? It sounds really crazy to be like, I'm already there. But when you entertain it, when you open up to the revelation that you are already there, that it's already here, that everything already is, it's so much easier. It's a game you are playing to create something that's already created for the joy and the experience of creating it. It's just play, really. Very, very, very few people have the perspective that life is just play. They think that it's very serious business and they live very serious business, and then one day they die. And they're on their deathbed and they're going, why did I do all this stuff? Why did I do all these things? Why didn't I do all the things I wanted to do? Why did I do all this stuff I didn't want to do? And why didn't I do any of the stuff I really wanted to do? You're not one of those people. You don't need to have an awakening. You're already awake, right? You keep going back to sleep intentionally, if you're honest with yourself. You keep getting distracted, but you're already awake. You're already aware that the possibility is here. You're already aware that for you, something miraculous is possible. Or you would never even look into stuff like this. You would watch 10 seconds of this and go, this is a waste of my time. This guy's out of his mind, which I am. But thank God, because the mind that was laid out for me was sick, right? I grew up in a relatively depressing circumstance, and it was depression, anxiety, and basically nothing else. It was a whole heap of suffering with no light at the end of the tunnel or anything like that. It was just like, oh, I guess life is terrible, and then you're dead. Thank God I don't still occupy that space 24/7. Every once in a while, I habitually go back to sleep and dream that I'm in that space, but I'm not. And it doesn't require some big revelation to get there. It doesn't require some big awakening, some big enlightenment. It doesn't require that. You're already there. You know you're already there. It's so easy to just be like, I'm awake, I'm here. What do I want? What's fun for me? What's interesting to me? What do I want my life to be? Anytime you ask yourself that question, there's such a movement towards that, almost gravitationally, that we undervalue, that we undersell. Because we so often go into, oh, I feel really bad. Life is really bad. Things are really bad. Things are bad and they're getting worse. Whatever it is. And the whole human race can be pulled into that gravitational force of things are really bad. The whole human race can be pulled into that. Whole societies are swallowed up by the gravitational pull of things are bad and getting worse, right? Societies have collapsed, and they will continue to collapse until people realize, what am I here for, really? What am I really here for? Anybody who does something destructive to themselves or to other people, I've got to imagine, has never been encouraged to really ask, what am I here for? What am I really here for? What am I really interested in? What would I really enjoy my life being? And if they have asked that question and they're still committed to a destructive path, I have to imagine that that is because they think that they can't get there, that it's never going to happen for them. Look at all the people who hurt themselves or who hurt other people and see if they'd really be doing that. If they thought they could have anything they want as their experience and that they were capable of creating that, the world would be a very different place if we all genuinely knew that. We do all genuinely know that. But the complication is, you're born and you know that, and then from a certain age to another age, everybody is telling you that this is the way the world is and there's not much you can do about it. Maybe if you work really hard or you have a very high level of finesse, maybe you will be able to impact some kind of slow, incremental, gradual change if you dedicate your entire life to that. But look throughout human history and see if the people who have really moved the human race forward, see if they were thinking in terms of gradual. See if they were thinking in terms of following the limitations that everybody else dictated to them. Look at somebody like Tesla. Was he going, oh, I guess this is the way things work and I should just hang out and do the best I can with the way everybody else tells me? Absolutely not. And the interesting thing about Tesla is he was very interested in energy. What are you not letting yourself know about energy? About what is possible for you in terms of your ability to create with energy? If you will really open the door of that question, you will not have any doubts about manifestation ever again. You will not have any trouble manifesting ever again if you will commit yourself to just asking the question, what can I create with energy? Not necessarily thought, although it could be. Not necessarily emotion, although it could be. Not necessarily feelings, although it could be. Not necessarily with your physical body, although it could be. See, a lot of us have decided that energy is limited to a particular modality or a particular framework or a particular formula. And so someone will tell you, well, when you're feeling good, that's when you manifest. And when you're feeling bad, you're pushing it away from you. That's putting the energy into a form and a formula that it can follow and that it will follow, but it doesn't necessarily have to follow. So if you have somebody else's structure, if you have somebody else's format that works for you and you like using it, use it. But if you have felt confused ever, if you have felt like, oh, this doesn't work for me, or I don't know how to do this, or anything like that, what can I create with energy? What am I already creating with energy that I don't even recognize? And what preconceptions about energy and about creation do I have running around in my head that make me think this is harder than I know it is? How much easier for me is this? What can I create with energy? Just keep asking that. See what happens. Thank you guys so much for watching. Again, if you have any questions, topics, problem, pain points, whatever that you'd like me to address in a video, please leave a comment. I would love to help anyone who needs help. Totally for free. Why not? And if you like the video, give it a thumbs up, like, whatever. I don't know. And also subscribe. You know, I hate asking for this stuff, but it really helps the channel out. It really helps me keep momentum with stuff like this, and I love doing it. So hopefully some more people who it could help will see it. All right, guys, thank you so much. What can you create with energy?